Welcome, everyone, to another inspiring child welfare forum hosted by Advocacy Activists Incorporated. Today, we gather to shed light on an important and deeply personal topic, knowing your rights within the family and child welfare system. Our focus is on the essence of the nuclear family, the love, unity, and strength that form its foundation, and the extended family members who may become intertwined with the system that oversees family dynamics, often referred to as the family policing system. The child welfare system touches lives in profound ways, shaping the futures of children and families alike. Together, we will explore how knowledge empowers us to advocate for justice, protect the dignity of families, and ensure the well-being of every child. May this forum inspire change and foster hope for a better tomorrow. Let us pray. Dear Holy Spirit, we come before you with gratitude for the gift of family, the foundation of love, and the support that reflects your divine design. As we gather to learn and discuss our rights within the family and child welfare system, we invite your presence to guide us with wisdom and understanding. Holy Spirit, we are reminded of your word in Proverbs 22:6. Train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he is old, he will not depart from it. You have called us to nurture and protect the next generation, ensuring they grow in strength, faith, and character. May we uphold this calling with integrity and dedication. Holy Spirit, we ask you to dwell among us today. Fill our hearts with compassion for every child and family impacted by challenges. May your counsel and comfort inspire us to advocate for justice, mercy, and the dignity of all families, as it is written in John 14:26. But the Helper, the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, will teach you all things and bring you to your remembrance all that I said to you. We pray for discernment and boldness as we navigate systems that affect the lives of families and children. May every conversation and action taken in this forum be grounded in your truth and love, bringing hope to those who need it the most. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen. And on the screen, I have words of wisdom. It says, I expect to pass through this world but once. Any good thing, therefore, that I can do, any kindness I can show to any fellow human being, let me do it now. Let me not defer nor neglect it, for I shall not pass this way again. And this is by Etienne D. Grillet. And another verse that reflects that in the New International Version, Galatians 6:10, it says, therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all people, especially to those who belong to the family of believers. This forum may contain legal information. However, the discussions or statements made should not be considered as legal advice. Advocacy Activists is a family advocacy support group that assists families that are going through the family, dependency, and juvenile court systems. We are not attorneys, and we clearly encourage all participants to seek legal counsel when and wherever necessary. All information presented is for educational purposes, and that is our disclaimer. So we have our rules of engagement. This forum is being recorded. By attending and remaining in attendance, you agree to being recorded. The recording is the sole property of Advocacy Activists Incorporated and is for advocacy and educational purposes. Please keep your mics muted for the duration of the discussion. There will be a Q&A session at the end. Please utilize the raise hand option if you would like to speak during the Q&A session. If you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat so that it can be answered during the discussion or Q&A session. Please govern yourselves appropriately in the chat. Next, we have our guest presenters. We have Natalece Washington with a JD and a CWLS as the Policy Counsel at the National Association of Counsel for Children, NACC. She's coming to us from Atlanta, Georgia. Then we have Roberto Benavides Wong, a legal services coordinator for Florida Immigration Coalition Incorporated, also known as FLIC, and he's coming to us from Miami, Florida. Then we have Aubrey Edwards-Luce, Esquire, with an MSW, and her pronouns are she and her. She's the executive director of Sayra and Neil Meyerhoff Center for Families, Children in Courts, CFCC at the University of Baltimore School of Law, and she's coming from Baltimore, Maryland. The contact information and details for our presenters can be found on the Advocacy Activists website at advocacyactivists.org/KYR. The family. So follow me as I paint a picture in your mind for the discussions to follow. So just like the system, we have divisions in the family structure, which is denoted as the family circle, right? And the first division is the nuclear family, which consists of the father, the mother, the son, and the daughter. And that dynamics can vary depending on how many children you have and how many father or mothers are involved. So you can have a blended family as well. So in that division 1, which is the nuclear family, we have the center of the family circle, which is an individual. That individual is a child. Then next, we have the parents and siblings to complete the nuclear family, also known as the immediate family. Then there's the division 2, the extended family, which can consist of grandparents, and that could be grandparents on both sides, grandparents for other children from other fathers, other mothers. And that can also be great-grandparents because sometimes great-grandparents outlive grandparents. Then we have the siblings, and that could be the siblings from both mom and dad or the siblings for grandma and grandpa. And then you have your aunties and your uncles, which could be great aunties and the uncles of the siblings for mom and dad. Then you have your cousins, which is way, way extended, just different levels of generations depending on how many kids each generation has. And then we have adopted individuals. And those adopted individuals can also include our godparents. An adopted individual can be anyone that is welcomed into the family, whether it be the home or you select them as a part of your circle and denote them as a sister or brother, and you call them your friend. It can be a best friend or simply someone that is accepted. In some instances, when a family becomes involved in the child welfare system, there are foster parents and adoptive parents. So here we have it, the family, the center of all intersectional issues. When it comes to child welfare, the child becomes the center of focus for the child welfare system. So next, so even though we may not realize it, trauma hidden and suppressed can affect us in all aspects of our daily lives. Since children are the focus of the child welfare family policing system, we will introduce our first speaker, Ms. Natalece Washington, from the National Association of Counsel for Children, NACC. Ms. Natalece Washington, JD, CWLS, joined the team NACC in January of 2021 as the policy counsel, where she leads the Counsel for Kids campaign at the state level. The campaign influences and drives policy change to ensure legal representation for all children experiencing foster care. Prior to joining NACC, Natalece had 10 years of child welfare experience, exemplifying her commitment to improved outcomes for dependent children. Natalece served as policy administrator with the Georgia Division of Family and Children's Services, Director of Operations for Fulton County CASA Incorporated, and Senior Child Advocate Attorney at the DeKalb County Child Advocacy Center. Ms. Natalece has been certified by NACC as a child welfare law specialist since 2015. All right, Ms. Natalece, go ahead and inform us.
Thanks, Shakima. I need access to share my PowerPoint on my screen.
Go ahead.
You have to grant me access as a co-presenter or a host for me to share my screen.
Okay. Does that work?
That did it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I'm learning.
Excellent. So hi, everyone. Natalece Washington. I'm putting it in presenter mode. Natalece Washington. Shakima asked me to come and speak with you all today. about children's legal rights. And so I will be giving a talk that is really focused on the national landscape of legal representation, since this audience may have people from other states. I run a campaign called Counsel for Kids, so you'll hear me reference it fairly often, and it is NACC's campaign to help ensure that every child who's experiencing foster care is appointed a lawyer. As in Florida, there are 12 other states in addition to Florida that don't guarantee all children lawyers. And so we're working to change that. That is my job. That is our project. To that end, we've published Seen, Heard, and Represented. It's a policymaker's guide to counsel for kids. And so it's kind of a one-stop shop for everyone who wants to learn, policymakers who want to learn about counsel for kids, explaining children's legal rights, due process issues, et cetera, how to deliver high quality legal services. And all of these links are active and will take you to each of these things that I'm referencing. And I'll be sharing this PowerPoint with Shakima afterwards for distribution. We also have a technical assistance application, which is typically when people in various states want to work on Counsel for Kids campaigns. They'll fill out this application and we'll develop a service plan so that we can help advocates in a state change law, do policy reform. So I have a short amount of time and a long road to go. So I'm going to try to hit high points, but give you a comprehensive PowerPoint so that you will have it for your reference for when you need it in the future. We want to make sure that we're always centering the one at the center of the child protection case, which is the child, the young person. We want to make sure that we're underscoring what their legal interests are in the case. So often they've been overlooked historically, and we want to make sure we name them and uplift them so that they are of top priority for decision makers and policy makers. We also want to just compare ourselves to other states. There's nothing like the power of persuasion to show lawmakers what other states are doing and how they're getting it right and how their outcomes are improved. And just generally speaking, what research says about the impacts of high quality legal representation. So I'll ground us in what's really at stake. You all probably know this, but just to say it out loud, I think it's always important to say it out loud, even if we know it. When a child is in foster care, they have legal interest. They've been separated from their families. They're involved in a very complex court proceeding. A court is determining how often they get to see their family, where they get to live, if they can be with their siblings or not, the type of placement they're in, whether it's restrictive or more family-like, what school they'll go to if they have to change schools, how their medical and mental health needs are met, what immigration assistance they may be afforded, their permanency plans, and, addressing abuse or neglect that happens even while they are in the custody of the state in the foster care system. So much is at stake for young people in foster care. So it always seems to me that we shouldn't have to fight as hard as we do to exemplify why children need lawyers. But because we have to also name all of the liberty interests that are at stake. Luckily, we've got a lot of people on our team that agree that children do have legal rights that are deserving of protection. Not only the federal government across administrations, but the American Bar Association and the National Council of Juvenile and Family Court Judges have all issued written guidance that talks about children in child welfare court proceedings being eligible and having the necessity for legal representation. So again, the federal government in the last few administrations have supported quality legal representation. So that is a good place to be in the time that we are in right now. And we hope that does not change. 13 states still do not guarantee legal representation for all children, right? So that means in those 13 states, every single child may not get a lawyer. So in half of those states, children are afforded lawyers sometimes. So I wanted to say that before I showed you this crazy, complicated Counsel for Kids map. I am the person who designed the map, so don't judge it. I am I designed it because I wanted to add all the information that I could possibly fit on it. But for your purposes, in the bottom right, there's a key that tells you right to counsel. So right to counsel is every state that has a color. So Florida is a state that is colored white with blue stripes. And that's because in Florida, kids who meet certain criteria must be appointed a lawyer. That's why what blue stripes stand for. In some states like Colorado and New Mexico that are yellow and blue, those states, attorneys are appointed to kids over a certain age, and guardian ad litems are appointed for kids under a certain age. So I wanted to indicate to you like there's a bifurcation. In the yellow states, all of the children are appointed attorney guardian ad litems. In all the green states, all the children are appointed traditional attorneys. In all of the gray state, Texas, the randomly colored state, because I couldn't figure out what else to do with it, attorneys are appointed to all children, but if termination of parental rights occurs and they are placed in the permanent custody of the state, they are no longer guaranteed attorneys. So I wanted to demarcate that without leaving them out. And the states that have no color have no guarantee for a best interest attorney or a stated interest attorney. So what are these guardian ad litem, stated interest, expressed interest attorneys that I'm talking about? So glad you asked. Let's skip ahead. So the models of legal representation that I've included are the basic and most common models of legal representation for children in foster care. The client-directed model is also known as an expressed interest or a stated interest model. And that is where the goals of the litigation are determined by the youth's wishes, what the youth says they want the outcome of the case to be. So that is client-directed, also known as expressed wishes or stated interest. So the attorney is charged with advocating for those wishes and being bound by certain rules of our profession, confidentiality, duty of loyalty. That loyalty means they can't practice when there's a conflict of interest. So this is the model that most elevates youth voice. And it is endorsed by my organization, the ABA, and the Galt Center. This is how youth in delinquency proceedings are always represented, unless there's diminished capacity and a guardian ad litem or something has been appointed. But generally speaking, this is the model of representation for youth in delinquency. The best interest model is the guardian ad litem. In most places, that person is an attorney, and that attorney guardian ad litem selects the best interest, determines what is in the best interest of the child, and advocates for that after it's been determined. They provide a court report, and they advocate for what's in the best interest. There's a risk of bias that's included in this particular model because it is a human being who is determining what is best for another group of human beings. And while I said best interest is typically provided by an attorney guardian ad litem, we know that in many places, lay volunteers or CASA volunteers are identified in a state statute to provide best interest advocacy. Now, this is done a lot of different ways. In some states where there is no right to counsel for youth, the only guarantee may be a guarantee to a volunteer. In some states, the volunteer is an addition to a lawyer's work. So just two different people doing two different roles on the same case. And then we have hybrid models. The hybrid models can be the guardian ad litem, attorney ad litem, where one person is charged with both roles. So that's our model here in Georgia. Shakima told y'all I'm here in Atlanta, so I am able to give you an example of that. I will be appointed to a case as an attorney for the client, meaning the client gets to explain to me their expressed wishes, what they want. But I am also charged with being their guardian ad litem, where I am advocating for their best interests. So I'm allowed to do both of those jobs as one human being at the same time until those roles conflict. So there are cases where I've never had to conflict, where I agreed with the child and thought what they wanted for themselves was what's best for them. But there were times where I did not agree, and I was able to conflict off of my role as guardian ad litem and remain on as their attorney, pursuing their desired outcomes, and someone else would be appointed as a guardian ad litem. So there's all sorts of models of legal representation around the country. But in the places where there is no access to counsel, we are trying to navigate systems and educate policymakers to pursue the changes, pursue policy reform, pursue updates to their court rules in order to ensure that every child is appointed an attorney. Some barriers we run into why people don't want to appoint attorneys, cost, of course, but that isn't always the leading example. There's always also attorney shortages. There's also a concern that kids will ask for things and it will put them in jeopardy. And while we argue constantly that empowering youth is very important and that there's still a lot of protections in place to keep harm from happening to them, just despite what they may ask for, that's still the general consensus. We hear things like all they're going to ask for is, Snickers bars or candy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But attorneys who represent kids know, when we're going out to talk to our clients and advising them and counseling them, we are telling clients what the court is deciding. And the court isn't deciding oftentimes what their breakfast, lunch, and dinner is. The court is deciding legal issues. And so attorneys are counseling them and advising them on legal issues, and thereby gaining, establishing that relationship and letting them know what options they have and what choices there are to make. And that's, again, more education that we provide to our policymakers who are often concerned about frivolous things when, in fact, we have not even seen that being a trend. NACC has a Your Case, Your Rights guide. Again, you will get this PowerPoint afterwards with active links where folks in any state, youth in any state, can search for and find what rights they have in their states and be given tools on self-advocacy. This can be used for and by youth in states with the right to counsel or states without the right to counsel. Our research showed us that 61% of youth didn't know their rights while they were in foster care. And many even felt they weren't worthy of having rights. And so it's really important as advocates to constantly let young people know there are rights, there are rights, there are rights. You're worthy of your rights. You have a voice. Even if you do not get your own lawyer who is fighting for your expressed wishes, you can engage in self-advocacy. Or if you have a lawyer who is advocating for your expressed wishes, you can partner with them to ensure that the judge is able to hear from you and know what your desires are. We know that young people often know so much about their case. They know everything about their families. They're experts, and so often we've seen historically that they're marginalized and silenced and not given a chance to participate in all of the decision making that's happening surrounding their lives. And so high quality legal representation makes sure that that isn't occurring, that the attorney is in fact engaging them and bringing them in, ensuring that these meetings are not going forward without them, ensuring that there is an opportunity to bring them into conversations in the courtroom. Anna Cody did this research project where she gathered information from a large number of participants, and without fail, they reported they wanted to be seen, they wanted to be engaged in their legal proceedings, and they wanted to be told what is happening in their case. So it's more than the rights existing and being in law books and in cases that real people and families may never read. It's important that the information be presented to young people and families so that they can know their rights to be heard and pursue the opportunity to be engaged and participate. They can ask to show up. Hey, I want to attend my court hearing. What court hearing is this? What is happening at this court hearing? So that they can be prepared and participate. But we know that this can't really effectively be done without counsel. Fairness requires that kids are given lawyers so that they can move through the system and have effective results, right? Moving through the system to address all of their legal issues, to address safety concerns, to address their own well-being. A lot of times they will be silenced if there isn't a counsel who serves as a megaphone for the things that young people want and need. Like I told you all, the child protection system and the juvenile legal system, delinquency just move differently. The juvenile legal system has had lawyers for kids who are charged since 1967. Meanwhile, the child protection system, there are still places where lawyers aren't provided. And even if lawyers are provided, they may be best interest lawyers and not lawyers who must advocate for what the kids' expressed wishes are. So there's the law behind this is really liberty interest. And that is just a legal term for the rights at stake in dependency child protection cases. So the fundamental, the integral rights that are at stake are safety, health, and well-being, as well as the right to be with and raised by your family. And that's a big one. There's a lot of writing on it. You'll hear more and more about it in academia, in the news, that there's a fundamental right to family integrity, and that the family has the right to be together as a solitary single unit free from state interference. And so that's at issue, right in the middle of these child protection cases. And so separating the family should not occur without due process of law. And while parents tend to be appointed lawyers in most of our states, it's the child who's actually separated from the family and placed in state custody that is not guaranteed a lawyer. So NACC recommends the expressed interest, client-directed, stated interest, 3 different names, type of representation, because we want to see youth voice maximized. We want youth to have a voice in what is happening to them and in their lives. It is critically important. And we see that youth even have better experiences with the system when they've had a chance to have their say, even when it doesn't go their way. So we know that sometimes what a young person asks for is not going to be what the judge decides in a child protection case. But that doesn't change the improved experience with the system that kids enjoy for the simple fact of being appointed legal counsel. So other policymakers just may say generally, lawyers are just going to say what the kids want, and it's just going to be all frivolous, all problematic. But really high quality legal representation involves a lawyer that has developed an attorney-client relationship with a child, gotten to know the child, engaged in counseling, talking to the child, talking to other people, getting a good framework for the case, and advising them so that the child is advised before they even get to court of the likely outcomes of the specific request that they're making. So this client-directed expressed interest model of representation is in place in the states on the top half of the screen completely, 100%. But on the bottom of the screen, it is in place only for certain youth in certain categories, whether it be because of a certain age, like in Colorado, client-directed legal representation is only for youth 12 and up. But in Alaska and Florida, you have to be in a certain special needs category. In North Dakota, they have unique language that says you get a client-directed lawyer if you're of sufficient age and competency. So all of the states at the bottom have their own sort of method to deciding who gets a client-directed lawyer. All of the states at the top, every kid. So what about CASA's guardian ad litems? Many of you will come from states that have CASA's guardian ad litems programs. You've heard them referred to as the eyes and ears of the court. So CASA is a national program, the National Court Appointed Special Advocates for Children, INCASA. And so there are affiliate programs of INCASA in every state except North Dakota. And so the role is very clear. That person is an advocate. They are tasked with gathering information and writing a report where they are making recommendations to the judge about what is in the child's best interests. They are given 30 hours of training. They are non-lawyers, and they are required to see a kid every 30 days. So they're frequently at the foster home, group home, institution, wherever that child is. And they are invited to court and expected to be there to let the judge know what they found out. In some states, that person has a lawyer. In other states, that person does not have a lawyer. So when I say that person, I'm referring to the volunteer. In some states, the volunteer is represented by counsel. In other states, the volunteer is not. So in South Carolina, a volunteer does not go to court by themselves. The volunteer has their own lawyer, and the lawyer can call the volunteer as a witness, help them testify, and they're in the process just like a parent and a parent's attorney, a child and a child's attorney, and the state and the state's attorney. In Georgia, volunteers do not have lawyers. So volunteers are in court, and the judge can call on them. The judge can bring them up to the witness stand and question them. The judge can ask them to stand and just go on record with what their recommendations are. But that volunteer role in many places is not represented by counsel, but they're subject to cross-examination by other parties and involved in the court case by the judge. The judge ultimately is the person who decides what is best for the child and family. So whenever you hear people saying, why would we just let children have attorneys and have attorneys advocate for what kids want? Who's going to care about what's best? Who's in charge of best interest? We can always turn their attention to judges because that's what judges are for. Judges are there to weigh evidence presented by parties and to make a court ruling. And that ruling is supposed to be what they've determined based on the evidence presented is best for that child and family. So how do we ensure that we are protective of these legal interests of a child in foster care? How do we ensure that the representation that every youth is provided is of the highest quality? Because that's the only way you can get the improved outcomes and the system accountability. If the lawyer is like a potted plant and not doing their job and not seeing their kids and doesn't know anything about the case, we can't say that that lawyer is making a difference for the kid and family, right? And so we talk about the indicators of quality legal representation, mandatory training. The lawyer has to get ideally training before they're appointed to any case and training ongoing throughout the life of the case. Standards of practice, rules and regulations for the practicing lawyer that tells them what to do and how to do it. Multidisciplinary teams. Is there a peer partner? Just like Parents may have peer partners that are working on cases with them. Children may have peer partners that are working on cases with them. There may be social workers on the cases, investigators, or other professionals as deemed necessary by the facts of the case. Centralized law offices. So in a lot of places, attorneys are appointed as contractors. So they don't have any supervisors and they are not in an office where there's training and resources. So they're just private practitioners who may be overwhelmed, overloaded, and without any oversight. And so centralized law offices are one way to combat that, much like in Florida, the offices of in Broward County and Palm Beach County. Again, quality legal representation is connected to supervision and oversight, reasonable compensation, and caseload caps to ensure they're not trying to work 200 and 300 cases, and that they're able to have set limits so that they can do their best work. Research shows that high quality legal representation prevents the need for removal and expedites permanency. So faster going home, faster getting out of the system. Decreases in the placement changes in school moves. So fewer unnecessary school moves. More engagement in case planning and court hearings. You know, your attorney is talking to you and making sure you're participating and making sure you're on notice of the court hearings and making sure you have the opportunity to show up. So we see that the research reflects that there's more participation. We also see increases in kin placements. Kinship placements, we know that kids have improved and better outcomes and yields cost savings. So I haven't explained this part to you. Well, yes, I have. Expedited timeline. So when kids can go home faster, the state is able to spend less money on the legal representation, on the foster care placement, on the salary of the social worker, on the court time and the court personnel. There's a lot of cost at stake. Additionally, we know kids that languish in foster care and are in foster care for unnecessary long periods of time experience an abundance of trauma and other things that can lead to more cost on the back end. You know, maybe they're homeless, maybe they're dependent on public assistance, maybe they're there's so many different things. Maybe there's, you know, pregnancy, unplanned pregnancy. Maybe there's any things that have additional costs that are connected to languishing in the foster care system. The Children's Bureau, one of the agencies in the federal government, has since 2017 strongly encouraged high quality legal representation for every party in all stages of a child welfare proceeding. There's even money to pay for it. Title 4E can pay for the cost of legal representation. Let me say that completely differently. It does not fund 100% of the cost of legal representation, but it can provide partial reimbursement for some of the cost. So it is some funding that can be utilized in addition to state funds. No state will ever be able to just not pay. They will pay and there will be a minimal reimbursement offered to them through the Title 4E. But it is showing the federal government's continued investment in the legal representation of children. I hope I didn't go too long. I tried to cover everything you said, but now I am open to questions. I saw the chat lighting up, but I could not see what was placed in the chat. So Shakima, you want to field me the questions or?
Yes, does anyone have any questions at this time? Sorry about that. The wrong buttons. I'm here learning. All right, Miss Natalece, thank you so much. We go back to where we were. All right, thank you so much, Ms. Natalece. Ms. Natalece is also working with an agency called Foster Fairness here in Florida. You can go on to fosterfairness.com. That's FOSTER. FARNESS.com website to get more information with infographics that shows you the difference between a guardian ad litem attorney versus a child attorney. And like Ms. Natalece said, she'll send the PowerPoint. It'll be up on our website on advocacyactivists.org, so you can look at that map. Or I can just screenshot that map so you can determine in your state if your state allows you to have an attorney for your child, so you can start exercising that right so that your child can have legal representation. So thank you again, Ms. Natalece. We move on to this slide. When I started our support group back in 2016, a parent brought this to the support group, and I've held on to it all these years. And I've actually taught my kids this, and it's come in very handy, because once you're in a system, it seems like you never get away from the system. So it's called the Miranda Awareness, and this is for the young people. I have the right to remain silent until my parents are present with me. I have the right to have an adult of my choosing present while being questioned or interrogated. I will not accept a representative of your choosing. I have the right not to speak to you without the permission of my parents. I have the right to decide whether to go with you or to remain here until my parents are called and arrive to be with me. And I find that this is also useful when your kids are being stopped by the police. I know a lot of us have teenagers now that are starting to ride, get those licenses or driving without one. So this is a good thing for them to learn and have available to them. All right, next we will view the Foster Shock documentary trailer, and it was a film by Miss Marie Franco.
I fit in. I got to find out who I am. I got to know where I fit in.
Florida was the first state to fully privatize child welfare. When that happened, private companies sprung up across the state.
And these folks had very expensive CEOs and chief financial officers. A huge amount of expense created in overhead that never existed in the system before.
Life here was hectic. It was crazy. It was exactly the type of situation you would not want your child to be in.
No one's knowing the double lives that they're living, and they could go across the street and make some money for sex to get what they need and to take care of the stuff that is not provided by the system. And it's become normalized.
The system's not working, the diagnosis is wrong, the preventions are not there, something is really afoul.
Caring for children is a business. Business has a bottom line. Those kids are the dollars that you've got to get in.
If you really go through it, it kind of feels like they're kidnapping you in the middle of the night. They're putting you in a home that you don't know anybody, and they isolate you from your family members, and you're alone.
This is my closet. This is where I had to hide at. Angel appears to be experiencing some gender confusion.
Strip, what are you doing? I'm a little girl.
It's like incarceration with training wheels, basically, is what they're going through.
No, you deserve to grow up in this place right here, aging out of this place.
I'm telling you, we need to get out of there. This man raped me. And you tell me, stop imagining things that are not there.
All of us felt like we were criminals. We're being disciplined for something that our parents did.
Like a sign on the street, like an instinct within me, like a cloud in the sky. I got to find out.
So there are a lot of key points from this documentary that holds true today. This documentary exemplifies how the system breaks down the family support circle and the trauma that results from the over-policing of families and interference with the right to parent. This issue transcends borders, regardless if you are an American citizen or migrant. And like Ms. Natalece said it in the previous presentation, all children that are subject to child welfare court proceedings should have legal representation. And this is a great segue to our second presenter, Roberto Benavides Wong. who has been advocating for immigrant rights for the last 10 years. Since the defeat of the DREAM Act in the Senate in 2010, he has participated in state campaigns such as in-state tuition for undocumented students and national campaigns like DACA and DAPA, always fighting for the relief and protection for his immigrant community. Since Roberto started working at FLIC, which is the Florida Immigration Coalition, in 2017, he has served as the citizenship coordinator as well as quality control manager for the civic engagement team. Now, as the legal services coordinator, Roberto continues to push FLIC's theory of change by helping immigrants access quality pro bono legal aid. Hailing from Lima, Peru, he continues to pursue his dream of becoming a mechanical engineer, acknowledging and honoring the sacrifices his loved ones have made to provide him with the opportunity. Go ahead, Roberto, and instruct us.
Thank you so much for having us, Shakima. Pleasure to be here with you all today. And it is a great lead-in from that video to talk about immigration and particularly about the political space that we are living in today. I'm going to be focusing a little bit on two particular topics. One is constitutional rights, and the second one is family preparation and family preparedness and how we can have our immigrant families prepared with everything that is going on. I'm sure you have seen the news of the current administration pushing for harsher and much more upfront targeting of immigrants, particularly undocumented immigrants. However, we are seeing that this is outright having a really detrimental effect on the rest of the immigrant community, particularly because they are not interested or they don't seem interested and or seem to be willing to focus on what they say they are, which is you know detaining criminal immigrants or immigrants that have committed crimes. We have seen time and time again folks that were allegedly not supposed to be the target fall into the system, into immigrant detention and deportation. Few examples of these: we have seen a Puerto Rican family in Milwaukee get profiled because they were speaking Spanish. We saw a military veteran in New Jersey get detained. Immigration actually harassed him, did not believe him that his military ID was valid. They thought he was undocumented just because he was in an area where there were undocumented immigrants working. We are currently seeing the detention of not just U.S. citizens, but also targeting of lawful permanent residents for exercising their First Amendment rights. So this is very concerning, and that is why we are today focusing on constitutional lawyer rights, which does apply to anyone and everyone, adult and child, regardless of immigration status. Let me go ahead and share my screen. I do not believe I have. Okay, there we go. Access to share. Here we go. Excellent. Thank you for allowing me to share. So, yeah, we just want us to first be a little reflective of the moment that we're living in. I'm in the state of Florida where there's about 1 in 5 residents of the state of Florida is an undocumented immigrant. Oh, I'm sorry, 1 in 25 in the state of Florida is an undocumented immigrant, which means that it's very likely that everyone in the state knows somebody that is potentially undocumented. It could be a neighbor, could be a family member, could be your coworker. And so this is why it's important for us to talk openly about constitutional rights, because while it does apply to everyone, I think us being more open to our for our community to be able to learn about this allows us to protect each other. As you mentioned, I'm with the Florida Immigrant Coalition. And our mission is to grow the connection, capacity, and consciousness of communities to strengthen pro-immigrant power in Florida, and to make Florida a more welcoming space for everyone. And like I mentioned before, I'm going to talk about two things in particular. One is about constitutional know your rights, best practices, and family preparedness for folks. So, know your rights. Where do they get derived? Where do they come from? I think if you if you did not take a civics class here in the U.S., constitutional rights come from the Constitution. Most of them are extrapolated from the first 10 Amendments, which are the Bill of Rights. And in particular, when it comes to immigrants, there are a few things that we want to really hone on, things that are relevant across the board, regardless of ages, things that are that are easy to go back to, for folks to be able to exercise their rights. And I definitely want to reiterate something that Shakima presented earlier, which is this is not legal advice. I am not an immigration attorney, not an attorney. However, these are the learnings that we have had over the years of working in immigration spaces. So the first thing, which you have probably heard before, if you've ever watched any procedural on TV, or if you've been involved with any law enforcement, is the fact that you have the right to remain silent and not answer any questions. And again, applies to whether you're a child or an adult. This comes from your Fifth Amendment rights, where you have the right to not to incriminate yourself. And I think it goes without saying that if you are not in the presence of your attorney or an attorney that is representing you, the best thing for you or anyone that you're with to do is to remain silent and not answer any questions. Does that mean that that your rights will be respected and protected by the folks asking you these questions? Not necessarily, but you do have these rights, and it's of the utmost importance that you go ahead and exercise. The other two things that I definitely want to touch on is the right that you have the right to not be searched without a probable cause. Again, will folks, in this case, law enforcement officers, immigration officers, will they pose a physical threat and respect the right to not be searched? We cannot guarantee that. However, you do have the right to tell them that you don't have they don't not have your permission to search either your home, your person, your property, your car, without probable cause and without a warrant. And the warrant can take many shapes. Unfortunately, we do not have the capacity to go over every type of warrant, but there are two things, particularly with immigration related to immigration, that I definitely want to touch on. Sometimes immigration will say that they have a signed warrant, and then when you look at the paperwork, they have a warrant from immigration court. Immigration court is not a district court, and that is something that can be deceiving, and people will take an immigration warrant to be an actual arrest warrant or a search warrant signed by a district judge. And so folks will make that mistake and then go ahead and give them the opportunity to search the premises, search for that individual, arrest whoever they're looking for, or just anybody in the premises. So it's very important that folks pay attention to their words, to what they're saying, what they're showing you. If you're at home, if you're in your car, you have the right to just speak through the window, speak through the door, through a camera. Maybe lower your window if you're in your vehicle and ask them for them to show you the warrant, to give it to you so you can read it. If you have the opportunity to contact your attorney or an attorney that can represent you, so they can read the stuff to you. And then the secondary part of this is to ask them if you're being detained. If they're going to take you and arrest you, they should have a probable cause and or an arrest warrant for that. Again, they may still take you, regardless of whether or not they have one. But that is something that if you do feel comfortable and have the ability to ask, you should ask. And again, to reiterate, private places, they do not have the right to go into your private places without your permission or a judicial warrant. And you do have the right to ask them for it, to show you the evidence so you can, go ahead and comply if necessary. At your home, and again, let me reiterate, you do not open your door. You have to see the warrant. Only a warrant signed by a judge and with the correct information gives the officers permission to enter your home without your consent. That is very important. And again, the nuances of a warrant can be explained better by an attorney in more detail. It takes a little bit more time. But there's usually two types of warrants: an arrest warrant and a search warrant. Search warrant allows them to search certain premises for certain things. An arrest warrant, they're looking for someone in particular to detain. And so those are the little things that if you do have the opportunity for you to ask, for them to be able to provide it, so that, again, you can read it and make sure that everything is in order before you actually give them consent. And that is something that sometimes as immigrants, we are told we're here in this country, we don't belong, so we have to respect and assimilate the laws. But what they don't tell you is that with laws also come constitutional rights, and you do have the right to, again, to remain silent, to protect yourself, to make sure you don't answer any questions without an attorney. And those are things that they don't tell us. And so I'm saying this to illustrate that sometimes we've had instances of folks that and families that will say, oh, because it's an officer, and you usually regard them, you hold them in a high regard, law enforcement officer. A parent will say, oh, it's okay, open the door, let's talk to them, let's cooperate. If we cooperate, right, nothing will happen, everything will be in order. But the moment you open your door, whether it's your vehicle, your property, your house, your apartment, that is you giving them consent to enter the premises and look for and what they are there for. So again, critical that you remain calm and you do not open the door, and if you feel comfortable, talk to them through the window, or again, remain silent if that is something that you want to do. The other space where we find our immigrant families is at work, right? Immigrants tend to work in service spaces, construction, agriculture, which tend to happen in public spaces. And so for public spaces, officers don't need a warrant. They can just walk in, walk up to you, potentially walk to inside of a restaurant, to the offices where you work. And so with these public spaces, it requires a little bit more attention from everyone in the space. One is, if there's a manager, if there's an owner, make sure that individual knows that they have the right to ask for a warrant, to see what they're looking for, to make sure that they're looking in the right place. Because if they're not, this person in leadership can ask them to remove themselves from the premises if that is possible. Okay, so asking to see a warrant to make sure that they have the right business, the right area, and what they're allowed to search, right? They cannot go in and search, for example, if it's in an office, private office, they cannot search personnel file, because that is private documentation that is very likely under a lock and a key. And so they would need a warrant to search for those documents, right? Like I said, is it impossible for them to not respect your rights? No. It is probable that can happen. So making sure that, again, the person in leadership knows that they have the right to ask for a warrant. Now, for everyone else in the workplace, if you have colleagues, if you have folks that you supervise or supervise you, you may not know their immigration status, but I think it's important for everyone to have an understanding that, one, you need to remain calm. I know it's really hard, especially for those that may be really scared about what's going on right now. But you have to remain calm because anything that falls out of the norm in a social interaction could put you and your colleagues and your families in danger. So important to, again, remain calm, ask your coworkers to remain calm, or your workers if you have any, if you supervise anybody to remain calm. Do not run. I think that goes without saying. Running, it makes it seem like it's an admission of guilt, and immigration can take it as such. And then, they may be willing to use force to detain you. So, again, please remain calm, and do not run. And then we go back to a little bit of things that I mentioned earlier before. One, you have the right to remain silent. You do not have to provide any information about your immigration status. You or anyone or any underage folks in the space, you do not have to say anything without having a lawyer present. So reserve the right to answer any questions. More importantly, though, do not lie. I think we've seen quite a lot where folks think that if they just say something that makes it seem like it would appease the law enforcement officers, the immigration officers, everything's gonna be okay. Well, if you lie, it could be a felony, actually. You could be detained and deported. So don't lie. Very critical. You have the right to remain silent, but do not lie. Okay? Do not give false documents. That is another one. I know folks sometimes have resorted to using identification that is not valid in this country. Don't carry it around with you. Don't have it on you. It could be misdemeanor, it could be a felony. You could get in very real trouble for having it on you. And do not carry papers from another country. There's a lot of folks that are undocumented that, because they like proper documentation here in the US, they will lean on carrying to their passport or their consular document from their native country. The reality of it is that when it comes to immigration, it can very easily facilitate a deportation proceeding. And if your purpose, your goal is to not be separated and deported from the US, even though it seems a little bit daunting at the moment with all the changes that are taking place with the current administration, honestly, carrying papers from another country just makes it a little bit easier for them to carry it out. So, again, let me reiterate: you have the right to remain silent, but do not lie, do not give false documents, and do not carry documents from another country. Now, I've been mentioning a few things about an attorney, right? If you have an attorney that represents you, or you have your own attorney, so where does that come into place? Let's say somebody's getting detained by immigration, right? Being sent to a checking facility or a detention facility. Well, please do not sign anything before speaking to a lawyer. First of all, the government may try to intimidate you and trick you into signing a deportation. They may tell you, if you sign this, it will be better when you get out, and your new process will come in. They may tell you that, look, so if you don't sign this, somebody else will get in trouble, and these are all tactics that they know that they can get away with. So do not sign anything before speaking with a lawyer. And I think folks say, well, but I can read. Sure, you may be able to read English. You may be able to read a warrant or any legal document. But the reality of it is that these documents can be very intricate, can be complex, and very nuanced. And so the only one that can actually determine if it's safe for you to sign anything will be your attorney. And so please do not sign anything. And if you have neighbors, if you have kids, I think the inclination is to tell them, hey, follow what the officer tells you, because they are looking out for us, right? They are a person of power, they're a person of stature, and so we got to respect what they tell us. So, but But no, in this case, don't sign anything. Don't let yourself be tricked. I think we've heard of these cases time and time again where somebody was promised something, they signed it, and then when it came for to see what the next step was, there was no solution because they had already signed their deportation away. So again, let me reiterate everything that I said before. We need folks to understand, to memorize this, to be able to regurgitate it without doubting themselves, and to be confident that these are the steps that they need to take. If you find in a space with law enforcement, particularly immigration, and if you live in the state of Florida or any border state, you may find yourself with in a space with immigrants. One, stay calm. Stay calm. Don't run away. You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to ask for an attorney. You have the right to not sign anything until that attorney lawyer reviews this document. Because again, the last thing you could be doing would be signing your deportation away. So do not let yourself and your family be tricked. In the spirit of sharing this information with the community, we at FLIC, in partnership with other organizations, including Americans for Immigrant Justice, we have developed a mobile app. If you put it on a browser, you type RAISE, RAISE.is, and there you can do plethora of things. You can actually look at what your constitutional rights are. You will be able to see what for you to review what I've been talking about, those steps. If you find yourself or a family member or a neighbor or a friend that's been detained by immigration, you can call us at this number. It's one click away once you're in the RAISE app, and you will be able to connect with our hotline, where we can potentially connect them to a detention and deportation specialist, an immigration attorney or organization that works on this stuff. So very critical for folks to have this open on their phone as soon as as they can, and or if they can make it a favorite page that they can go to very quickly, do that. It's in multiple languages because we're in the state of Florida. Not only is it in English, but it is also in Spanish, Haitian Creole, and Portuguese. We are working on trying to make it in other languages, but as far as Florida goes, those are the three most popular, most used languages. Yeah, I mean, it's if your family members speak English but they don't know how to use a phone, show them how to get to the RAISE app, where you can go ahead and pull up your rights. You can look up the resources. You can call the hotline to report. You can also call the hotline just for information. We have a database of resources for our immigrant community, whether it's healthcare, housing, legal help. Please have them connect, especially now with everything that's going on. So again, it's RAISE, RAISE.is. It works on any mobile browser. That you don't need to write .com, anything. It's RAISE.is. And that is a wonderful app that, again, we started working with last year. Now, the second part I want to touch on is the family plan, family preparedness. Why is it important to have this? Well, we need to defend ourselves and our community. We need to be prepared. We're not trying to fearmonger folks, but with everything that's going on, that you see what's happening on the news, they've detained and essentially deported to another country, folks from a different country, right? That very likely do not have any criminal charges, but it's going to be really hard to get them back here. Folks that applied illegally to be here in the U.S., to go through the legal processes already existing, right? Today went on the federal registry that the CHNV program is ending in 30 days, which is for Cuba, Honduras, Nicaraguan, and Venezuelan families, a program that was legal for them to come and apply for humanitarian parole. So, again, we're not trying to fearmonger. We want to make sure families are prepared for anything that could potentially happen. And so we already talked about one of the parts of the family preparedness. One is know your rights. And I think not enough is talked about when it comes to sharing this. I've heard time and time again immigrant families from the parents thinking, hey, I want to protect my child, so we're not going to talk about immigration stuff because it's too scary, it's too worrisome. But what happens if and when that parent finds themselves in detention and or deportation, and their child is left alone at school, waiting for them to get picked up, right? Or that child is in need of medical aid, and that those parents get detained, right? No, we want the community to be open with their children about the reality of things, for them to be, if they're old enough to be online, they're old enough to be able to be talked about immigration, about their rights, to make sure that they understand this and how to exercise them. Second part of this is an immigration contact list. You're talking about having again, if you have an organization that you can refer to and call for help, like FLIC, have that on a speed dial. If you have an attorney that is helping you your immigration case, have that person on speed dial and make a list, right? If you have if you or your child receives any medical treatments, and then you go to a doctor on a regular basis, have that on an emergency contact list, that everyone knows where to go and connect with them if something happens, if the main caretaker of the family gets detained. Make sure everyone knows where to find that emergency contact list, how to contact these folks, have them prepared. And also, what happens if you have pets, if you have kids or dependents that need support from somebody else, right? All these folks need to know how to react in case of anything going down with immigration. The last part of this is an important documents. We want you to create a file. We want folks to have this on hand, for anybody to come and take care of these files. And gonna go through the list. It's just a list, and we will be able to share this information with you all after the presentation. But documents like personal documents, proof of identity, passport, consular IDs, birth certificates from this country or another, association cards, immigration paperwork. If you or your family are going through an immigration process, any and every immigrant that has gone through an immigration process has something that's called an A number. That is your number that immigration relates to your case. So if you want to make if you can and want to make multiple copies that multiple individuals, trustworthy individuals, can have, go ahead and do that. Proof of physical presence. We're talking about receipts, utilities, rent, insurance, mortgage, car registration, bank statements, paychecks, anything that can prove that you've been here in the US. And it requires a little bit more nuance about why we're talking about physical presence. It mostly has to do with you being able to prove that you have never left the US, and that could be applicable to be able to help you with your immigration process. So all these will be able to help out. Proof of good moral character. Usually good moral character, folks talk about moral character when it comes to citizenship. Well, good moral character is just if way to prove that you are an outstanding citizen here in the US. It can be taken in support letters from employers, from friends, community organizations, faith leaders, anything that and anyone that is willing to vouch for you, that you feel confident and you can trust them. I would, it would not be, it would be really useful for you to reach out and make sure that, hey, if something happens, please, would you be able to write a letter for me? And I think that's what we're trying to build here, community, making sure that folks know that they are, that they're not alone. Then legal power documents, and I think these are not talked about enough. Power of attorney and guardianship forms. Like I said, I think a lot of folks, we know that the borders are Hoffman, who was appointed by the president, has said, hey, if we don't do family separation, that's really bad. What we do is we deport families together. Very recently, a U.S. citizen, a U.S. born citizen, I believe she's 9 or 10 years old. She was deported with her family right after her cancer treatment back to Mexico, if I'm not mistaken. I cannot speak for that family, but had it been me, I would venture to say that if there's somebody that's trustworthy, that child probably needs continuing medical care, right? But maybe back in their country, it's not something that they can get it. So I would venture to say that if they had a power of attorney or a guardianship form for children, maybe that child could have stayed here to get that medical treatment that they need, right? So these are some of the things that people have to talk it through a little bit more, because a power of attorney, as some of you may know, is a legally binding document that once it's executed, it's very hard to take back. Guardianship form, requires somebody that is extremely trustworthy for you to be able to say, hey, you will take care of my kids, right? You will take care of my dependents, right? But if you do have those individuals in your life, I would say that it would be important for you to see if it's worthwhile for you to get a few of these documents done and submit it in court just as a precaution. And then other documents that are important: medical records, insurance cards, emergency contact list, we already talked about, for victims of crimes or are cooperating with law enforcement. Documents about the case for individuals collaborating with police, that's what I mentioned. Documents in relation to the collaboration. There are some immigration benefits that victims of crimes or victims of domestic violence can get a hold of, and maybe they would be able to become residents eventually. So important for folks to be able to gather all that information together in one place. The holistic emergency plan. Talk to family workers or talk to family members and coworkers so that they're informed what to do. And that is, as long as you trust them and you feel comfortable talking with them about it. Yeah, talk to them so that they are prepared. You do not want to be not prepared. Remain calm. Do not run. Carry the card with the contact information of your immigration attorney on you, so you can make that phone call. If you can memorize their phone number, even better. We do have a hotline, which is the 1-888-600-5762. It does work all over the country. Most of the resources that we have are for folks based in Florida, but if you're from out of state, we are part of larger national networks where we can give you information on them. If you have children or elderly relatives or dependents, make arrangements in advance. Like I said, you would need a power of attorney or a guardianship form. Keep a copy of all immigration documents in a safe place. And again, if you can and have that trustworthy person in your life, go ahead and share that information with them. Here's a QR code. If you take a picture, it'll send you to the family plan. We can share the resources afterwards. And the last thing I definitely want to leave folks with is we have weekly events at FLIC. Our office is on Biscayne and 79th in Miami. But if you're really far or you're too scared to come to our office, You can log in virtually to get resources. And at our events, we're doing three things. One, we're giving the constitutional lawyer rights presentation so that everyone can learn about their constitutional rights, how to exercise them, what to do, just like we did earlier today. Two, we're doing legal consultations with immigration attorneys, exploring what those options are. The options are diminishing, programs are being sunsetted by the White House, but there's still folks may still benefit from some immigration relief, so keep that in mind. And the third thing we're doing is assessing the needs for guardianship forms and power of attorney. If the attorneys see that you do need them, we can prepare them for you so you can get them printed out, signed, and notarized. So those are things that for you to keep in mind. You go to our website, which is Florida Immigrant, FLIC.org/events, FloridaImmigrant.org/events. Welcome to come in, register for the events, come to obtain the help. And again, thank you, Shikimi, for having us today. If there's any questions about the things that I talked about, please let me know. I am not an attorney, so any legal questions, I'm not able to answer those. But we do have attorneys on our event, so if you know anybody that could benefit from coming in, please let them know that we're here helping them out. And I know things are, this is a marathon. Immigration wise, it's a marathon. So we want folks to stay calm, really think things through before reacting. The last thing you want to do is do something that will jeopardize your family or your person living here in the US.
Roberto, did you mention your event that you have on Wednesdays?
Yeah, it's every Wednesday. The event that I'm talking about, where we do the constitutional lawyer rights, the legal assessment, the legal consultations, and the power of attorney guardianship forms events. Yes, that is every Wednesday, and it's in the afternoon. So, and all the work is pro bono, so folks don't have to worry about having to pay. We're working with reliable organizations, Americans for Immigrant Justice, Counsel Legal Services, amongst them. So yeah, we are all the events are free, and that is on this side. We also have citizenship events where people can come in if they're legal lawful permanent residents to come in and apply for citizenship for free. We can help you with that as well.
And is that a hybrid event, virtual and in person?
The citizenship events are in person. We will be having virtual citizenship events in a few weeks, but they're not as frequent or as constant as the in-person events, which we have on a regular basis in Lauderdale Lakes in North Lauderdale, at least twice a month. And then scattered other events in Miami and other cities in Florida as well.
So the virtual events, if someone is not in the state of Florida, are they welcome to attend for the information purposes?
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. We've gotten several folks from Texas and Indiana, Illinois, come to, for help at our events. Yeah.
All right. Meryl, do you still want to ask your question?
Well, he answered most of my questions. My question was actually about how can I best assist the family that has minors and the parents that are being deported and the kids are here. Do they end up in foster care? Do they have the same rights? Well, I think they should, but are they being treated the same way as the previous presenter said, that they have the right to a legal attorney, even though it doesn't have to do with immigration, but it's still, they have to end up somewhere if the parents don't have somewhere for their kids to go?
Oh, sorry. Is that?
Yeah, that was the question.
It's your question, but I'm happy to tag in.
Okay, yes, please.
So if a child of any status is placed in foster care, is going to be guaranteed an attorney according to their state law. So if it's in Florida, if because that status is not a trigger for the appointment of a lawyer, they wouldn't be appointed a lawyer. But in Georgia, where every child has the right to counsel, they would be appointed a lawyer. And part of my advocacy as that attorney would be to pursue getting residency status for that child. So again, the right to counsel is based on the state law and irrespective of the immigration status. But yes, an undocumented child in foster care, if that state gives lawyers to every other child, that child will also be appointed a lawyer.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Anyone else have any questions? All right, we'll see no more questions. Thank you, Natalece, for jumping in. And thank you, Roberto. You said something that's very empowering when you went over your Raise.is app, where you said rapid response. And that is vitally important when you're in a moment of notice, when you're faced with a challenge and you have to plan. That's not the moment to be planning. So to have that family preparedness plan, not just if you're immigrant, but if you're just in this country in general is best. So you have someone that your child can go to when the system comes a knocking. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, give me a second. All right, thank you, Roberto, once again. Just like in the family circle, can you all see my screen or did I?
Oh, I think I may have jumped the gun. Sorry.
My bad. I thought I was like, wait, did I get something wrong here? Okay, let me pull that up. Now y'all can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right, there we go. So just like in the family circle, there's a governmental structure, a government hierarchy, an overarching system with several divisions and departments that links families to the criminal justice system, the mental health system, the education system, even the homeless and human trafficking systems plays a role in the overall outcome of being targeted by the child welfare system that leads to following the money train and knowing your rights and the rights of each individual family member. So you have the child welfare governmental hierarchy, and it starts with the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services on a federal level. Then you have the Children's Bureaus of Office of the Administration for Children and Families, and that's another division within a division on the federal level. And then on the state level, you have different names here. So you have the Department of Children and Families in the state of Florida. But at the state level, it is important to note that there are variations in the department names across the 50 states, which we are working on a document to put on our website so that individuals can go in and see what's the name of the state department in their state, respectively. Then we come down to the local level, the CBCs. And a CBC is a community-based care agency, and most times they are private organizations that are either adoptive agencies or foster agencies. And this is how adoptive parents and foster parents become a part of the family circle. So that ties right into our next speaker. We'll have Aubrey Edwards-Luce joining us from Baltimore, Maryland with a rich resume of lived experience. I don't know what that's saying. Aubrey Edwards-Luce, Esquire, MSW, is the executive director of the Sayra and Neil Meyerhoff Center for Families, Children and Court, CFCC. She's a passionate advocate for children, youth, and families, dedicated to co-creating, liberating solutions with those most affected by social and legal systems. Aubrey is a social worker turned lawyer who has over 15 years of experience working with children and families who are already in or were at risk of entering court systems. She has worked in an informal juvenile court supervision program, a restorative justice-based Youth Neighborhood Accountability Program, a Victim Services Office, and as a guardian ad litem attorney for children in abuse and neglected cases. Before joining CFCC, she was the Vice President of Child Welfare and Youth Justice at First Focus on Children. Throughout her career, Aubrey has observed the profound impact family courts have on the lives of children, motivating her to ensure that families have the resources necessary to avoid unnecessary court involvement. Aubrey founded the Child Welfare and Race Equity CWLS Collaborative in 2020. This coalition gathers advocates with federal policy expertise and those with lived expertise to radically transform the child welfare system and create anti-racist policies and systems that support children and families to thrive in their homes and communities. Aubrey lives in Prince George's County, Maryland, with her husband, elementary school-aged daughter, young adult goddaughter, and 2 cats on the land that is unceded territory of the Piscataway tribe. She has lived experience as a hidden foster caregiver. All right, Aubrey, go ahead and enlighten us.
Thank you so much. So as I've said, my name is Aubrey Edwards-Luce. My she, her pronouns. It's great to be with everyone today. Thank you so much, Natalece and Roberto, for just enlightening me so much and helping me like refresh on so many pieces of the law. Uh, as it was said, I'm the executive director for the Sayra Meyerhoff Center for Family, Children, and the Courts. And I'm just going to share a little bit about who CFCC is. We are a national leader in the movement for family integrity. We envision communities where children and families thrive without unnecessary involvement in the legal system. And we promote child and family well-being while inspiring the next generations of attorneys to prioritize the power, voice, and needs of families. We engage communities in all that we do, and we work tirelessly to transform systems that create barriers to family well-being. Please feel free to follow us on Instagram. We've got a couple of tags here. In addition to being the executive director of CFCC, I also am the founder of the Child Welfare and Race Equity Collaborative. And this is a group of child welfare advocates that are working together to promote a radical anti-racist transformation of the child welfare system so that families and children can thrive in their homes and communities. And we do this by centering the expertise of children, youth, and adults who've experienced the child welfare system, and by creating policy recommendations, events, tools, strategic plans, and organizational connections. And you can feel free to follow us on Instagram as well. And the Child Welfare and Race Equity Collaborative was born out of the call that was happening in 2020 to really start looking at the way in which our government structures prioritize the funding of surveillance and policing of our communities. And there's a group of us who are thinking about the ways in which, there's a lot of call for like defunding police, and what does that mean for the child welfare space. And so as we started kind of going through the process of looking into what that means, we realized we really wanted to make sure that our understanding was rooted in the expertise of people who have lived through that system. And we knew that our policy recommendations really needed to be led by folks who have been there. So that's kind of what grounded the Child Welfare and Race Equity Collaborative's birth. And then I brought it over with me once I moved over to CFCC about a year and a half ago. And so if CWLS is my baby, then this is my grandchild, our Know Your Rights Toolkit. This is a project that was born out of the collaborative's commitment to making sure that families have their basic human needs. We were talking so much about what families need and the way in which when families don't receive access to the care and the resources that they need, it very often gets used against them and allows for the government to pull them into the child welfare system by oftentimes conflating neglect with neglect with poverty. And so because that was something that so many of our lived experts had experienced, they decided, as much as we want to make sure that we have housing for everyone. We want to make sure everybody has food. There's one thing that people have a resource for that can't really be taken away from them, and that's knowledge, right? Once you know something and you know your rights, it while the rights might change on paper, like you still know what your rights are under the Constitution. So we decided to really focus on developing a toolkit that could be used kind of across the nation by really grounding it in our constitutional rights. So this is a resource that we developed in partnership with many different like funders and supporters. These are our authors and advisors into developing the toolkit. And oh, I don't know what happened to my image here. Sorry about that. So let me tell you that there's 4 parts to our I'm sorry, there's 6 parts to our toolkit. And oh, I think I know what happened here. Sorry, let me go back real quick because I think I just have to. Nope, I guess not. I thought I knew, but I didn't. As I shared a little bit, we really wanted to make sure that folks understood what their rights were, specifically the constitutional rights, and we'll walk through this. But the 4th and 14th Amendment are the constitutional protections that we really wanted to focus a lot on. We wanted to make sure that we had the opportunity to share with families the data around disproportionate contact for marginalized families, families of color, and families where poverty is often misclassified as neglect. We also wanted to try to mitigate the emotional and psychological toll, right? So I'll make sure that I drop in, or actually maybe, Shamika, could you do that for me? Would you mind, Shakima, I'm sorry, would you mind dropping the link to the toolkit in the chat, but folks will be able to see that there's lots of little notes throughout the toolkit that really try to help ground folks in the fact that this is a really traumatic time for a lot of families, and that you're not alone in feeling that. And so we really wanted to make sure that we addressed the emotional and psychological impacts that Child Protective Services investigations have on families. So, educating families, promoting systemic change, and empowering communities were really kind of the bedrock of developing the toolkit. And our audiences are parents and caregivers, community advocates, legal professionals, and organizations. We wanted to make sure that parents were able to have the information that they needed so that when investigations happened, they knew what their rights were and were able to navigate those situations. We want community advocates and legal professionals to have to know that their parents and caregivers that they're also advocating alongside of have a framework so that they can work most efficiently as there's so much pressure and at stake in the early stages of these cases. And we also wanted to aid in systemic reform. So we mention different reform efforts throughout the toolkit as well, so that organizations know, hey, if they figure out, we want to actually work on trying to make sure that Child Protective Services are educated on the difference between neglect and poverty, that they know there are other organizations that are like-minded and we can help connect them. And that we think that by doing all of this, that we'll be able to help create a more just and equitable child welfare system. So when we start getting into the second part of the toolkit, we really start digging into navigating the Child Protective Services system. And so the overview for this part, we have we want to make sure that folks understand what CPS is. And there's so many acronyms. We try to do a good job of making sure we define what all of those are. And we talk about exactly what Shakima was talking about earlier in terms of there's different names for CPS depending upon where you are, what those agencies are called. DFACs, I think is what they're called, or were called in Georgia at one point. In DC, it's called CFSA. In Maryland, it's called DHS or DSS. So we try to break down all of that. We also talk about why CPS might contact a family, what a family's roles and rights are during an investigation. We give tips for navigating the investigations, and talk about the impacts. And this is one of those places where we talk about the emotional and psychological impacts, but we also get into the data as well. We help provide tips for specifically looking at allegations of neglect that are often conflated with poverty, and try to help families understand how that conflation happens and what they can do to help educate the agency that what they're seeing is a need for support and not children being put at harm. And we also identify community and policy level supports as well. So I've got a couple excerpts, and like I said, it's a big toolkit. So I'm not gonna give like a page for every single page, but I will make sure that I share my slides. It's going to be one of those presentations where I'm going to go through it much quicker than you could read every page here. But I want to make sure you guys have the information to take alongside once this presentation's over. But here's like an excerpt, right, where we name the fact that CPS can feel really intimidating. And we provide tips right there for families to really kind of put into action immediately, right? Like start taking notes, be polite but firm, and stay calm. Very similar to the tips that Roberto gave us earlier. Here's another example of an excerpt from this section where we get into the data a little bit and share the fact that research shows that over over a third of children will experience a CPS investigation by age 18. And even more specifically, we talk about in the text of our presentation, or in the text of our toolkit, how children of color can be up to 50%. 50% of children of color, Black children specifically, experience a CPS investigation by the age of 18. We also talk about the rate of CPS involvement in families and how that's changed over time as well. Okay. Here's another excerpt. We share about specifically the disproportionate impact with marginalized communities, how families in poverty are 22 times more likely to be involved with CPS. And here's the stat that I was speaking about earlier, with Black children facing a 53% likelihood of CPS investigation. And these, we want to be pretty explicit that these disparities are not due to people who are families dealing with poverty, putting their children in dangerous positions more frequently. That this disparities are really reflective of the fact that there are systemic inequities and challenges that these vulnerable families are facing, and oftentimes lack the resources to be able to overcome. Here's a example of how we discuss the psychological and emotional toll of investigations, how families try to really put names to feelings that can oftentimes really help families feel more grounded and be able to continue on and focus on the details. That once your feeling has a name, it's easier to focus. We talk about the systemic challenges and harmful outcomes of CPS in investigations, and how even though there are over 500,000 children that receive reports every year from CPS, 83% of those reports are screened out or deemed unsubstantiated. So people are having, children and families are having these kind of very intrusive experiences with the system, and oftentimes nothing is coming of that. It's just an alarming experience without substantiated findings. Here is an excerpt from where we talk about like what is neglect, and As I mentioned before, part of the CWARE's focus is really making sure that families are not coming into the child welfare system due to poverty. And this was one of our policy priorities. And so we wanted to really focus on what neglect is and help folks understand that state to state, the definition can vary, and the line between what is neglect and poverty is not made clear very often. And so we have an example here, like a family that might be reported for not having sufficient food or having an unsafe housing condition. But if there is a deeper kind of look at that, we'll realize that that situation may be due to economic hardship and not willful neglect. And this is important, and this distinction is important as we'll talk about later, because of what the laws are regarding protecting families from separation unnecessarily. So we talk about how parents like struggling to afford nutritious meals can be accused of failing to feed their children adequately. Parents working multiple jobs can be accused of not providing enough supervisions. And again, focusing on the fact that it's stigma and bias that can oftentimes lead to children being separated from their families unnecessarily. So when it comes to navigating this, we provide some specific steps that families can take. They can demand specificity. So CPS has to share clearly and specifically what the allegations are against families. So by asking for a detailed explanation, you can help distinguish between those concerns about safety and those that might be related to an economic hardship. Another thing to do is to share efforts that you've been making to access resources in the community, such as food banks, housing assistance, parenting supports, and document document those efforts as well. You can also request legal representation, as attorneys who are skilled can also help make those distinctions for you. So moving to our third part, this is where you'll see that we're very grounded in the constitutional context. So this part of our toolkit really looks at both the Fourth Amendment protections and the 14th Amendment protections. And so the Fourth Amendment provides everyone in the United States a protection against search and seizure, which translates to a right to refuse entry of CPS agents to your home. It also translates to a right to an attorney. And there are some, I guess we could say like asterisks here, because when that happens and who pays for that, there are lots of details that vary by state. And we highlight those when you get into the toolkit itself. The 14th Amendment is where case law has explained that families have the right to family integrity and that parents specifically have a right to the care, custody, and control of their children. And there are limitations to this as well, ways in which that can be infringed, specifically there are certain emergency circumstances where the public interest in family and child safety can supersede the parents' rights. Additionally, we talk about the challenges that parents may experience when trying to enforce this right to family integrity, and provide tips on how to protect family integrity as well. So here is where we get into the Fourth Amendment. I feel like this is one of those amendments that many folks are becoming so much more aware of, especially because of the great works that's being done in the immigration context, where folks are clearly hearing like you don't have to let anyone into your home. They have to have a warrant. It has to be signed properly. The same kind of protections. Those protections are stemming out of the same constitutional provision, the same constitutional amendment. And particularly during a CPS investigation, this means that they have to have proper CPS has to have proper justification before they can intrude into your family life and your home. And so knowing that can help you, have confidence and ensure that your family is being treated fairly. So, one of the rights, as I discussed, is the right to refuse. And we get into the fact that you have to have a court order that's signed by a judge, or if there's an emergency, such as a child being in an imminent danger, then the CPS worker can enter your home. But you can still, at either of those places, you can firmly request that to see those court orders or documents. Also asking for the worker to articulate what is the imminent danger is another way to enforce that right. There's the right to attorney. And as I said, this is not a there's no federal constitutional right to an attorney during a CPS investigation, but this Fourth Amendment is oftentimes the grounds by which states have asserted a right for and codified a right to having an attorney. So when the right to an attorney activates varies by state. Additionally, whether or not there are legal services available for your case, depending upon what stage you are in the investigation or the life of the case, that is also a state enacted right. So this is kind of one of those where there's like grounds for it inside of the Constitution, but the way that it's gotten interpreted and implemented is kind of by the states. And we provide a link here that's live, and you'll be able to click that when you receive the slides to be able to see the right to counsel. And we also provide in the toolkit links to public defender's office to be able to find out whether you have the opportunity to get connected to counsel at this stage in the case. Here in Baltimore, actually, we have a pilot project that is providing pre-petition representation for families in the Baltimore area. So at the CPS investigation stage, families can call our public defender for the Baltimore City County and be able to get connected to a division of the public defender's office that is providing pre-petition counsel and helping families navigate the investigation stage. Because typically parents do not get assigned an attorney until after a petition's been filed and a court date is coming. We talk about what CPS can and can't do. They do have the right to be able to interview your child, and they can examine your living conditions if you've consented or if they have a court order. They also can request permission into your home, but they cannot force their way into the home without a warrant or emergency circumstances, and they cannot interview your child in your home without your permission or without a court order unless there's imminent danger. So we talk about the ways in which families can assert their rights, remaining calm, seeking counsel, documenting everything. We also talk about the 14th Amendment to family integrity. I realize I have run out of time very quickly. So let me speed up here. We talk a lot about just the right to family integrity and the way in which there's both a substantive and a procedural due process right. We talk about the emergency situations where CPS can temporarily remove a child without court order as well. Let me just very quickly get to, we also talk about like the federal laws. We talk about CAPTA as well as the Family First Prevention Services Act. Lots of information here. We talk about the Indian Child Welfare Act and the different ways in which those can be applied to protect families. And we talk a lot about active efforts and as well as reasonable efforts. But I want to make sure I get to part 5. This is part 5 and part 6 are really the parts where families will have gotten all the background information already so that they can really look at what are the ways in which they can ask for the things that are required by federal law and by the Constitution and steps that they can take to hold CPS accountable. So I highly recommend if you're working with families or you're experiencing this yourself, spend a lot of time with parts 5 and 6. We talk about housing and prevention strategies that can be used there, and as well as the rights to having child placed with families if they can't remain. But please make sure you look at part 6, where we talk a lot about different resources that are available and that you can access across the country. We've got live links there. And we also have this quick reference tool. So this really lines up, what the rights are that we discuss throughout the toolkit, and then what the actions are that could be taken, and resources that you can, in that last column, resources that you can look at. Time flies when you're having fun. But thank you guys so much for your attention, and let me know if there's any other questions.
Anyone have any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Hi. Thank you for all of that information. It was very informative. Well, I'm trying to figure out how to pose the question. It's in terms of guardian ad litems. It was confusing to me when I went through this court process when my child had a lawyer, but I thought that lawyer was working on the best interest of my child, but it just appeared they were working more for the state. So they also assigned a CASA worker in my state, New Jersey. That's just a layperson. And I was told that the CASA worker would meet with me, for the best interest of the child, discuss the family. My child's completely nonverbal, complete care. So when I got to court, they said they never assigned a CASA worker, but when I got to court, there was one. So how do you handle those kind of instances in terms of fighting for your child's rights?
Yeah, well, all the disclaimers. I can't be your attorney, but this is what I can say in terms of legal information. Like guardian ad litems oftentimes have ethical responsibilities that are established by the court and the bar association. And so I think, that's one place to find out like what it is that attorneys are supposed to be doing when they're assigned to those positions. You could also think about discussing with your attorney how you feel things went in terms of that attorney being the guardian ad litem attorney not representing the best interest of the child. Oh, excuse me.
I agree with everything Aubrey's saying, Lolita. And I would just add that you could also contact the CASA program simply because the CASA program, I train CASAs, one of my many part-time things. And so there is very specific policies and procedures of what a CASA is supposed to do. And so they may not know that their CASA is not fulfilling the obligation, which one of them is to see you at least occasionally. They don't need to see you every month. They need to see your child every month. But they should be reaching out to you because they are supposed to report to the court based on their research, your progress on the court ordered case plan, if any.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, Aubrey, just trying to tag team.
No, I appreciate it. I always love to tag team with you, Natalece. Jump in whenever.
Yeah, we're all a team here, and that's what we're here for the information. And that's a great tip. The number one best tip throughout this forum has been stay calm. Because, we get into that mama bear mode or parent, this is my diamond in the rough and don't touch it. But that's a really, really good tip is to stay calm. And then another thing that you brought up, and it was also brought up in all the other presentations, was the constitutional rights. So that knowing that right, we we used to, when I had my support group, we went with the Fifth Amendment right, but that seems like incrimination, right? But it kind of helps. But over time we learn, and so this is a good thing for people to know, and that's in every state, because this forum is not just for the state of Florida, for anyone that comes from other states, that you have constitutional rights. And that Fourth Amendment right and that 14th Amendment right is vitally important. And the Fourth Amendment right, because we talked about this, Aubrey, about a lot of parents want to know about recording. So, I mean, you do have the right to refuse search and seizures, but what other rights do we have? And you have to look in your state to know what that state law is and interpret that law and make sure that you're not violating the laws in your state. So each state is different. And as you heard today, Florida is at the bottom of that list of being upheld child welfare system, and have a lot of work to do in other states. That's why I brought individuals that's on the national level to speak to us today, because on the national level, we have to start understanding our rights to be able to make changes on our state levels. And that's very important. So that Fourth Amendment right, the right to refuse the search and seizure, whether you're an immigrant, whether it doesn't matter where you're at, that's important. And also the right to an attorney. Even children need attorneys. And I meet a lot of parents that don't know that their child can have an attorney and don't even know they can go to their local legal aid societies to get an attorney. And know in the state of Florida, and I don't know if anyone has this information in all the states where the legal aids do have divisions for attorneys for legal aid societies, but that'd be a great thing to have to give to parents, because a lot of parents don't even know they can go to the legal aid for help. They figure the system just gives them an attorney automatically when it goes into this child welfare system and courts, because they figure it's the same as a criminal court, but it is a little different, and we will see in a few minutes. And then also you have the right to exercise your Miranda rights. And the Miranda rights is like similar to what shared earlier, which was more for the child, but there are Miranda rights that the police officers are supposed to read to you when they stop you or anything like that. And you must exercise those rights to remain silent. It is best to remain silent. And so we go on into the child protection, key federal laws and initiatives. Since we're talking about constitutional rights, the Fourth Amendment talks about protecting family integrity. And we have a lot of federal laws around family integrity or disintegrity or destruction, I should say, as we call it. You have the Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act, CAPTA, of 1974 and 2010. It was revised in 2010. So here we go. The start of all of this child welfare mess that needs to be reformed, recapitulated, and we need more families to come forward to help to create the child welfare reform changes that we need, and not just these individuals that's on the call and other individuals in other states that are in the ground doing the work. We need to all come together and start working in silos to really effectuate change, because as you can see, these laws are years and years and centuries ahead of us. So you have the Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act, CAPTA, of 1974, revised in 2010. Then you have the Indian Child Welfare Act, ICWA, of 1978. And then you have the Adoption and Safe Families Act of 1997. Then you have the Fostering Connections to Success and Increasing Adoptions Act of 2008, where I believe, if I'm correct, anyone could correct me, that's where we started seeing a tick in the increase of removals because of those hypervigilant laws that came into play. Then you have the Family First Prevention Act, Services Act of 2018. Then you have the Social Security Act, the Title IV-E and Title IV-D funding. And the Social Security Act is where the money's at. Why these laws are important? Because they govern how the money flows, and how they enact hypervigilant laws such as the mandatory reporting law, creating family policing agencies and institutions to bully, criminalize, victimize, and traumatize families into becoming complacent, especially when they don't know their rights and how to assert their rights. So the family was created out of love, a union, a bond, a connection. So shall we govern ourselves while being aware of the corporate structural systems that exist. For true love, we unify, and through that unity, we shall conquer. And as always, with every discussion, there are actions to advance child welfare reform. Here are some of the upcoming and ongoing opportunities. So we have the Letters to Stolen Loved Ones by the MJCF Coalition. And the love letters are a collection of heartfelt letters from family members separated by the family policing system. And you can get involved if you like to be a part of writing a love letter to your family member that's in the system, or maybe your rights were terminated, or maybe your child was adopted and now you're back where you need to be, or you've been fighting and didn't understand this fight, and you're here now in a season where this information is being put out in different states. As you see, Miss Aubrey, Miss Natalece, we have different coalitions here in Florida. You have Immigration, the FLIC, that's working on the immigration sector, and they have several different organizations within their coalition that's doing the work and getting this information out. So it's time to link up and start getting informed and understanding how to assert your rights to get back with your loved ones. But in the meantime, this is a way to heal when you've been separated from your family. So you can send a love letter with the coalition by going to mjcfcoalition.com. Also, we have our own Voices for Change support group at Advocacy Activists. Everyone is welcome to come no matter where you stay in the United States and in the territories. You can write us at info@advocacyactivist.org, or you can go on our website and use a contact form to reach out to us. We are always looking for volunteers to help keep this group alive and flowing, because out of this group is where we get a lot of the information for these, or even the ideas for these forums that we host. Then we also have the Black Mothers March on the White House, which will happen this year on May 11th in Washington, D.C. And you can register and find out more information at blackmothersmarch.com. And that's mothers with an S. So blackmothersmarch.com. Also, that what's not pictured here is Advocacy Activists' Family United Statewide Forum. And this forum was created to identify leaders in each county and each state to bring us all together as one. We also have our Family Voices initiative under the Voices for Change, where we would like families to share their stories through videos, written articles, op-eds, news reports, and other means. And some of these stories can go along with what Ms. Natalece is doing with the Foster Fairness Group in Florida, where we're trying to get the voices of parents heard as it relates to having an attorney. And even what if you ask for an attorney? Like in my situation, asked for an attorney but was denied and did not even know I had the right. But luckily I had individuals around me that understood rights and laws and connected me with the right individuals to get my children attorneys. And it was vitally important because it helped my children to come home, whereas my kids could have never left my home had I been given an attorney from day one. So that is vitally important, and it's great if we can have stories where people had attorneys or you even was denied an attorney and how that affected your family. It would be great to hear from you so that we can share that nationally with Ms. Natalece initiative with the Foster Fairness Group, so we can start advocating for every state to have legal representation for children.
I have a comment.
Go ahead, Lily.
While it sounds like it's a very good thing for children to have their attorney, in my particular situation, I had a public defender. My child had the guardian ad litem. In my state, they are attorneys, but yet I wasn't allowed to talk to the attorney. So how could I be the voice for my child? And my attorney wasn't doing it either. So in a sense, for me, that created a major problem, and I didn't know how to go around that.
Yeah, I was going to say one thing that I really like about the toolkit, and it's the most gentle prod that I could do, is I really think that it's important for families to know what their rights are so they can help keep their attorneys accountable. Because when you're in a legal proceeding, there are ethical issues with other people's attorneys talking to other people's clients. So we usually can't get around that. But what should be happening is, your attorney should be contacting the guardian ad litem attorney and making sure that they set up a time for you all to do an interview or to have a discussion or a meeting. And in my own experience representing kids, like the cases that closed most quickly or were able to prevent removal where the parent's attorney was really being very zealous. And so I think I think it's very important to like know what your rights are, and then you sometimes have to push for your attorney to say, hey, this is what I know I can do. Why aren't we doing it? And that's part of what we're hoping happens in the toolkit, is that families can feel empowered to assert their rights for themselves, even when their attorney may not be as zealous as they want them to be, because you're in charge. When you're being represented by an attorney, it's a direct representation, and so you're the boss. Um, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that, Natalece.
You can never find unmute when you need it. I don't think I think you've covered it all. I just always like for folks to know that sometimes local practice and just attorney practice kinds of defines how things are done. And so it's really helpful to find someone in your system who has experienced it or who is knowledgeable of every person's role, because the solution to your particular issue, Lolita, could have been asking your attorney to facilitate communication with your child's, and that could child's guardian ad litem, and that could have been the facilitated means to an ends, because an attorney is not supposed to talk to a represented party. That's just something we're not allowed to do by law. And so the CASA can talk to everybody because the CASA is not a lawyer. So that's just a quick version of that. But finding someone who knows the players and knows what their role should be, because I will acknowledge that all the time everybody's not doing their job well or right, or could be better. So finding out how things are supposed to be done, and then seeing where there's a lack, and addressing that with the appropriate channels.
Thank you.
And it's noted in the chat that it's good to know the supervisors and leadership to take things up the chain of report and the chain of command. And that there is also the option to contact a local ombudsman office, which always has been sort of not in operation. They dismantled it back in the 1990s, and then they supposedly put it back in the 2000s, but it's still not operational. It's not functional. Our governor wives have this initiative that, call it myself, I refer foster kids to, and it's not functioning. So if you have a functioning local ombudsman office to make a complaint about your agency action, attorney, or guardian ad litem, you definitely can go there. And there's other options too, that you can file complaints, but don't expect immediate response. Most people think that, oh, I've complained and I'm supposed to get what I want, but that's not necessarily how it works. But knowing your rights from the jump start, you could avoid all of this longevity stuff that you can seem to never get out of once you're in it. Go ahead, Aubrey.
I was gonna say, you can go to the bar as another example, to the local bar. That is, I have definitely had to let someone know that that's what I was going to do, and then suddenly they started doing different things. So it's a motivation for many attorneys.
Yes. Awesome. Very awesome conversation today. So we do hope that today's forum has been enlightening, informative, and has demystified, illustrated, and illuminated the law and its legal systems, making them less intimidating through discussions of the rights, responsibilities, and roles of the family circle. This Know Your Rights Forum was hosted by Advocacy Activists Incorporated, who expresses enormous gratitude to our collaborators, Karina Ramirez, from KR Website Design and Creations. You can find her on LinkedIn if you're looking for a social marketing designer. She's amazing and easy to work with. Then also for Ms. Lolita Allen, who's an RN with a BSN and case management certification. She's our program intake coordinator at Advocacy Activists, and she did a lot of the research you heard me reading today for this forum, and a lot of the other research that will be placed on this events page after this. So thank you, Lolita, for your extensive research. Also, we'd like to say great thanks to our presenters for their lived experience and professional expertise, and we recognize the value that you have as partners for change. and to the community for registering and attending. And we ask that you donate and stay tuned for upcoming forums and events at Advocacy Activists. If we have anybody has any other questions at the time, you can go ahead and ask your questions.
I just want to say this is one of the best forums that I attended on this subject. I've attended a lot throughout the years, and I've never gotten this much information that's very, very crucial and helpful. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Lolita. Anyone else have anything they want to say or any questions? All righty. Well, with that said,
thank you very much. This was wonderful.
well, thank you, Walter.
Yes, it
So,
was a good forum. I appreciate the information, and I will be sharing.
thank you. So you all can get all the presenters' information. Once I finish by hopefully Friday, everybody would have links to all the stuff that was presented up on the event page so that you can easily access it and share it with many people. I know some people had an issue with logging in. I don't know what Zoom is doing to me, but they're not going to get another penny or dime out of me. But at least and some individuals who was needed to be here were here, and this information is available so you can share it freely so everyone can be informed. This is the goal of our forums, is advocacy and educating our community so that we can stand strong together and we can start effectuating child welfare reform and change. Thank you, everyone, and that's our forum. Thank you for the attending. Have a blessed evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good night.